All right, hello everyone. My name is Charles Crompton, and today I'm going to share my story of how we got to where we are today. For those who have followed me on Instagram for a while, or maybe heard me on the Andrew Hines podcast, you probably have the highlights from the last 2.5 years or so. For those that haven't, I'll recap quickly for you now. Uh, 2.5 years ago, my wife and I were working 9 to 5 corporate jobs. We had a 1-year-old girl, living in our beautiful home. And we decided, seemingly out of nowhere, to both quit our jobs at the same time to build an Airbnb arbitrage business. If you're not familiar with that business model, essentially you're leasing a property from a landlord or real estate investor, then you're furnishing the property and then subletting it on Airbnb or other platforms with the owner's permission, of course, and you do that for a profit. And then you lease multiple properties, and that's how you build your business. So we both quit our jobs to build this business without any prior Airbnb experience and without even launching our first property. We both just quit and went for it. So after doing that, we launched 30 properties in our first 5 months and spent the next couple of years really building and optimizing this business. And now that it more or less runs itself, it's very automated with our teams and our software. And so we don't need to spend too much on the day to day management of the business. And so the last 6 months, we spent our time in our true passion area, which is to build a coaching program where we can help others either add income to their lives today or also pursue that escape from 9 to 5, just like we did. And so that's where we are today, living our dream lives with our two beautiful kids. We now have a 4-year-old Charlotte, and William is 18 months, and we're just living that dream. And so we wanted to share more on how we got to this point. A lot of people have asked that question, what led to this? And I think ultimately, uh, what I would say is this didn't happen by mistake. It didn't happen so much out of nowhere. Everyone on the outside, of course, just thought it was completely random that we quit our jobs. Uh, but it was not that random. We have kind of manifested this life that we're living today, and it didn't happen by mistake. We were quite successful in life and financially before we quit our jobs, and it all kind of led to this moment. So today I'm just going to share the background story of how this all came to be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on 6 moments for me where I faced some major fear. And 5 out of the 6 times, I leaned into that, and ultimately, navigating through that fear, uh, ended up with the greatest moments of growth in my life. And so I'm going to share those moments as I share this story, and I think there's a lot that will resonate for many that are listening. And then right at the end, I'll share my thoughts on, my biggest learnings and takeaways over the last 10 years or so as I've been building this life with my wife and best friend, soulmate, Tiffany. So, okay, starting back, I'm going to go back to my internship year in university. Up until that point, you didn't miss much. I was your typical, kid guy growing up. My parents were divorced. I didn't feel like that had much of an impact on me growing up, to be honest. I seemed I just didn't think about it that much as a kid, and so I played a lot of sports. I played video games, had a lot of friends. Uh, you know, did fine in school. I didn't really apply myself, but I got good enough marks to do what I needed to do, and so very typical up until I would say my internship years. This is between my third and fourth year of university. The first time I guess I was forced to be an adult. I had a full-time job for 16 months. I moved in with my dad in Toronto to be close to work, and that's where I got a taste of what it might be like, to be working a 9 to 5. And so it was during this time that yes, I was learning the corporate side, but I also was, living with my dad as an adult, and over this time, over the months living there, I started to realize for the first time, I guess, that my parents weren't perfect. Not sure if you've ever had that moment when you realized your parents are human and not perfect. And so the biggest thing for me was realizing, and I guess accepting that my parents weren't happy. Uh, they yeah, from divorce and onwards, and probably before that, they were truly unhappy, suffered from depression and anxiety, and never really they weren't able to find themselves in the life that they wanted to live. And that was sad for me to accept, as their kid, that my parents weren't happy. And then kind of understanding more and more some of the causes of it. The one that stood out to me the most was financial, that this was a cause of stress for both of my parents, and it led to a lot of difficult times for them. And they never managed their money well. They didn't manage their income well, their expenses, or their spending. They didn't invest properly. And ultimately, that was a constant cause of stress that I think was a major reason in them separating ultimately, but certainly a reason why they are still unhappy today, broke. And so it was in that moment, that time at least during my internship, where I first really realized I needed to take control of my life. At that point, I was just checking boxes. So the first few years of university, got good enough marks to just to get by. Didn't apply myself. Was focused on just having fun, playing sports, working out. That's pretty much it. Um, During this internship, I decided to grow up and start taking control of my life. And the biggest, most important thing in that for me was that I needed to learn how to create wealth, learn how to manage money. That to me was a cornerstone of then living a good and happy life, and ultimately living your dream life. So that was my focus. And so going back to my final year of university, I switched my major from accounting to finance. I found it to be way more interesting, first of all, but also more focused on how to manage money and how to create wealth. And so I wanted to learn that for myself. And so I figured may as well get the degree in it. I'm already in business, so I can get that degree, focus on learning it for my own life, and also have a career in the same field. It made a lot of sense to me. So I went back to my fourth year with a whole new level of focus and purpose. Really, I would say up at that point, I didn't have a clear purpose. I had a long-term girlfriend. We met at the beginning of university, and we were still together now. It'd been 3 or 4 years. I was working out, having fun. That was about it. Now I had at least one obvious sense of purpose, which is I wanted to have stability in my life. And so going back to the point of fear, to be clear, the fear was to end up like my parents. And I mean, they're doing fine, but the reality was they didn't live the life and they aren't living the lives that they've wanted to live. And that was my fear, that, that instability, not having control of money was a true, it became a fear during this internship, and that, I didn't want to end up that way. And so I decided to take action on it. And so I don't think it was that intentional back then. I don't think I realized, the fear. I wasn't that, self-reflective at the time. I was just a kid, but I at least, took that fear and it immediately decided, oh, I don't want that, and went to pursue life in another way. And so I went back to school with Ernest, taking hard classes. They're all finance courses. They're all pretty difficult, but I studied hard. I went to campus every day from 8 to 5, whether I had classes or not. In between classes, I would either be going to the gym or going to the library to study and going back to my class. I finished right at the top of my class in the graduating year. And I was really proud of myself for doing that. It allowed me to get a great job in the wealth management industry. I got a entry-level job at Edward Jones, and I was going to focus on, moving up in my career, making more money. And to me, that was the path of stability. I was going to work a 9 to 5 job, move up, climb that corporate ladder, make good money, and have a stable life. And that was my focus. So that was that first level of fear, and I definitely took action on it. And right out of school, I went right to work. Um, I was working this a good job for a young kid, and I bought a cheap old used car with cash. It was just a few $1,000s, I think. My girlfriend and I lived in a basement apartment, paying low rent. And we obviously didn't have a car payment. We kept our expenses really low. We both made pretty good money for young kids. And so every dollar was saved. First, it was put towards her student loans. And right after that, we started saving up to invest. And so I had started a financial Excel workbook, a tracker to manage our finances. I used it for about 10 years from that point on. So I only stopped using it a few years ago. It ended up becoming quite a thorough workbook of all things money related. But anyway, at the time, it started off as just a basic, expense tracker. And that expense tracker alone really shaped the path for creating wealth fast. It's not like we had crazy high paying jobs. They were salaried jobs. We were making good money, but it was more tracking and being really responsible and having a clear goal that we wanted to create wealth early. And that was the time to do it. Time and compound interest, time's a major factor. You want to start young. Anyway, so we're doing all these things, really well, and I would say, again, my purpose at this point was stability. That's what I was hunting. And so, yes, money was a major component, but I wanted all those things, right? A good job, a house, a family. Of course, that was part of it. My parents were divorced. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to have a family and wealth. And so I was kind of checking all those boxes. I was studying hard. I was getting my certified financial planning designation to move up in my career. And so I was definitely ambitious, focused, determined with a clear purpose, trying to do all the right things to build a life. And that all really stemmed from my first moment of fear, which was that fear of instability. So now, at this point, um, I was engaged. I proposed to my long-term girlfriend. We got married, and we continued to focus on this a component of financial freedom, and I would say that um, there's multiple levels of freedom that I know now, and at the time I didn't. I was focused on level one at the time, which was just to me, it's mental freedom. And so wealth has this ability to create multiple levels of freedom for your life. And that's why I believe it's so important ultimately. And I'll cover them with this story. But that first level of freedom is just the mental freedom of not worrying about money, of having enough money that it doesn't have to be a point of stress. And that's all I thought of when I thought of money as a kid because my parents struggled with it so much and it really ruined their lives because of the stress that it caused and not having enough, not knowing if you can pay bills. Uh, I did not want that life. And so I wasn't looking to make money to buy fancy things or anything else. At the time, the purpose was to create that foundation of wealth fast so that we didn't ever have to worry about money. And that was the clear purpose. Getting that level one. That's all I really thought about. And so, doing all these things, clear purpose, and anyone who was looking in at my life. So now I'm 26 years old. I've been moving up in my career, getting my technical, designations to become, to be able to move up more in my career. I was married now for a couple of years, and we're now living in a home. We have an investment property, pretty decent sized investment portfolio already. And it happens fast when you track your money. Um, Anyone looking in on my life from the outside, as a 26-year-old would have thought I had life figured out. That, and that's what they saw. They saw the surface level stuff. They saw, great job. I have a beautiful wife, home, an investment property already. They didn't necessarily know about the investment portfolio that we also had, but certainly they looked in and saw happy people and people who had it together. The reality was, I was lost, um, very unhappy. And it was, I would say this fear grew over time. So definitely wasn't a moment of fear. This is now the second big moment of fear in my life, but it happened over time. I don't know how long, maybe, a couple of years or so, where I didn't feel like I was myself. I didn't know what I was actually pursuing now. I felt sort of lost. At this point, we already, didn't have to worry about money, knowing that we were going to be set up. And I felt like I was not myself, with the best description, but that feeling grew and grew more over time. Um, Ultimately, I my marriage ended. It was, a result of a lot of things, but mostly me just, being lost and not being myself. I was certainly not a good husband, not from any intent, obviously, just from being unhappy and making a lot of bad decisions. So this, fear happened, when as this was happening, as the divorce was happening, the separation, and uh, I was at this point afraid to be alone. And so as this was all happening, my biggest fear was losing the life that I had. It was on paper all the things that I had been working towards. I had done all the things to have the life that I thought I wanted, and yet I was terribly unhappy. And the fear was that I was losing my life, really, that I was losing my friends, a lot of connection with all this happening. I lost the connection to my friends, even to my family, and certainly with myself. I just felt lost. And so this was the greatest moment of fear, certainly in my life. I was depressed, not diagnosed, to be clear. I didn't go see a doctor. I should have, but certainly I was depressed and lost. Now living, by myself, separated from my ex, and I hit some really dark moments here at this point in my life, and it was at a point where I was at work and I wasn't actually at work. I was lost. It was debilitating the way that I felt, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember pretty, vividly one day just having to get up from my desk. I went into the bathroom. I went into a stall by myself, and I was quietly crying there by myself, trying to, I don't know what, escape. There's nothing else that I could do other than cry. And ultimately, leaving that room, I went outside and I called my sister. My sister at the time was one of the only people that I still felt, connected to. And I had no intent or like no outcome that I was looking for in calling her. I knew I needed to speak to someone, and that was the first number that I dialed. And so I'm walking outside now and I'm talking to my sister, and I'm scared. Yes, I'm sad and depressed, but the level of, debilitation that I felt, that was scary. Just feeling fully lost, and the fear of being alone and having to face myself and my new life, which was all of a sudden gone. And so I was just, sharing this with my sister, letting her know where I was at, and her what I had said to my sister, or I guess what I kept saying out loud on the phone, was, "How did I get here? I thought I was doing all the right things. How did I get here? What did I do wrong?" And as I was asking these questions over the phone, they were rhetorical. I wasn't looking for her to answer them for me, and I wasn't even looking to answer them myself. I thought I was doing everything right, and I just didn't know how I was in this place of being so unhappy with my life, falling apart around me. And my sister, I don't know how she realizes how wise her response was, and I need to go talk to her and see if she knew it at the time. But when I was asking these questions, she responded back with something along the lines to say, "Well, maybe you need to actually answer those questions." And I mean, that hit me. I needed to go digging for the answers to those questions. Why am I here? How did I end up here? Why am I so unhappy? And uh, that sparked a very difficult journey to find myself, because I did not know who I was. And that was the crux of it. I had no idea who I was at that point. And so it started this journey of asking myself some hard questions, and making some realizations. And that was my rock bottom. And from that moment, I started this very slow journey to finding myself, learning about who I am, trying to love myself, and building on that, and slowly growing from there. And so that was that rock bottom. And but I had started the right path. I was asked the right question, and I started facing myself and asking the hard questions. And ultimately, the some of the answers to that question, the biggest answers, it took me a couple of years to really figure it out. Actually, several years, to be honest, to really, put a pin on it. Um, the reason why I was unhappy as a 26-year-old was because of my fear of being uncomfortable and my need for stability. And so my need for having stability caused me to focus on such checkbox items to live life at the surface. And I didn't realize how bad it was. My fear of being uncomfortable, my fear of failure. I wanted, I needed stability so bad in my life that I avoided being uncomfortable or putting myself out there in every way. I didn't want to have, the hard conversations with myself or with anyone else. Didn't want to be vulnerable. Didn't want to take any risks or overcome any challenges. I avoided being uncomfortable at all costs, and it ultimately caused me to not know who I am, to not know myself, to live life at a very surface level, having fun, checking boxes, and not actually allowing myself to live a real life um, with knowing myself. And so it was that fear of failure, that fear of being uncomfortable, that ultimately, I was a coward. And really, if you, in some regards, especially as a husband, not being able or even considering being vulnerable or talking about what I'm feeling or anything. Wasn't even vulnerable with myself, let alone my spouse or anyone else. And that's what led me to where I was: fear of failure and truly being a coward in many ways. And it was that level of accountability when you're asking those hard questions, that level of accountability to truly own your own life, own the decisions that you've made, the behavior that led to those decisions, and taking full accountability of and ownership that you're in control of your life. And that was one of the biggest things in those early years of growth after hitting rock bottom was knowing that I needed to take accountability for the person I was, for the life that I had, that the life that I was living today was based on all the decisions I had made up to that point, good or bad. I can forgive myself, they're in the past, but first you need to take accountability and then learn from it. And so that was that was the hardest moment of my life and the biggest moment of growth. The growth took a long time. Like, right, that's the start of the journey, but it was critical, to start that journey. Um, Still, it was a few months later that I'm still broken and learning, and I met Tiffany, my soulmate, my best friend, my miracle. Um, I was attracted to Tiffany right away with just the person that she was. Bright, uh, huge smile, lit up the room. Truly, I know that's the typical line, but truly lit up the room. She's just so genuine in the person that she is. And maybe that was it. That's maybe part of what attracted me at the time. Now that I'm thinking about it, is that I knew I wasn't right. I wanted to put on some sort of face, again, fear of putting myself out there. She was just a kind, sweet, genuine person with always with a smile, wanting to have fun, wanting to be goofy, and I was very much attracted to that. And we started to see each other, and I would say that I was still in a rough place with a lot of baggage, and she was just so patient with me. And I don't know how, but she saw, I guess, who I truly was, and probably more than I actually did. And she was patient as I tried to figure myself out and overcome my, depression and anxiety, fears, and everything in between. And over those, a year or two, we both, were able to grow as individuals and start growing together. And this fear moment, number three was when I was having to truly put myself out there in a relationship. And so I hadn't really done that before with anyone. I haven't been vulnerable with anyone up until that point. And so that was another layer of fear, but I was forced to face it. I had this person in front of me who I felt this crazy deep connection to, and it, and knowing that I wasn't myself yet, that I was carrying a lot, I was forced to be vulnerable and sharing, where I was at and how I was doing, and through that vulnerability, we were able to, work separately and together, to figure some things out, and so uh, we That I guess so in the beginning my vulnerability was on some tough stuff, sad stuff, hard things. And then ultimately as I started to find myself a little bit more and understand myself and come out of my dark phase, uh, that open and honest communication that we had built, it just continued in I would say more positive ways. We always talked about the life that we want. And specifically, and I don't mean, cars or fancy home, we always talked about what life would look like together and the life we wanted to build, the people we wanted to be, the parents we wanted to be years before we had kids, talking about how we wanted to be as parents and what we could do to make sure we're the best parents that we can be. And really that these conversations were around how can we just continue to be better, better as individuals, better together, better for the people around us? How can we keep improving so that we would live the life that we wanted? And we always did that. We still do today. And this is where I believe the manifestation comes in, that we talk so much about the life that we want to live and everything in between, all the details, we can see it and we have conversations about it all the time, and it evolves and shifts and changes, but we're constantly talking about life. As well as what we're grateful for today. We just spend so much time talking about life. And when you do that, when you attach such strong emotions and you even can picture, a lot of it, you realize that you start aligning your behaviors and your actions to live that dream life, because otherwise you don't have integrity, right? If you want all these things and you talk about it all the time, you know right away when the work that you're doing every day doesn't align with that life. It becomes obvious. And so I would say you don't necessarily need to know the how. And maybe this is another lesson I should add in, but you don't need to know the how. You just need to know the life that you want to live and want it so bad. You're going to know if you're not doing what it takes to live that life. You won't have integrity and you're going to know it. And so it started for us with having those real conversations constantly and always, whether it was conscious or subconscious, we were always working towards this life, this dream life that we wanted. And so one of the big things for us at this point, maybe we're 28, 29, we've been together for a few years. Um, and we our next major phase on the wealth creation side was that time freedom. We had the mental freedom. We had, built up a significant, portfolio of investments already through, living under our means, investing, all those things. And this next phase of freedom was the time freedom, which was to us retiring. That, if we can retire early, we would get that time freedom. We had the mental freedom. Level two was time freedom, getting our time back. Because 9 to 5, obviously, if you got up all the hours from commuting, getting ready, even being in your head about your 9 to 5, I mean, we're talking about at least 60 hours a week for two people. That's 120 hours. You don't have time freedom if you have a 9 to 5. So we knew we needed to create enough wealth to retire early. And that was one of the, major tracks for our growth, was making sure we were, unleashing our best potential at work, raising our incomes, really pursuing our careers. We both enjoyed our careers. We worked at the same company the entire time, climbing the corporate ladder together. And living our dream life. We got married in 2019, and we're living in a beautiful home, still living beneath our means and still pursuing that early retirement, but also having a lot of fun. Taking a few really awesome trips together, and just continuing to grow as individuals and together. And then uh, Tiffany got pregnant, and it's 2020, January, February, and the next moment of fear. So this is the fourth moment of fear that I had in my life. And it was, yeah, January, February 2020, and our daughter was due to be born in May, and we're a few months away, and I wasn't scared to be a dad. I was excited to be, and I thought I was going to be a great dad. We talked about it all the time about what that would look like and how, yeah, what it would look like in action. And I just knew that I was going to try really hard to be a good dad, and then if I tried really hard, then I probably would be a really good dad. So I wasn't scared to be a dad. Uh, but this pit in my stomach started to grow, and what I knew what it was that my worlds were colliding. You know, Tiffany and I were focused on building our careers, working towards that time freedom that we knew was so important. You know, to be able to live life on our own terms, to spend time doing the things we wanted to do rather than things we have to do, spending more time with family, spending a lot more time giving back and having a positive impact on people for so many reasons. We wanted that time freedom to take more another level of control back into our lives, you know, being in control of the lives that we were living. It was important for us. And so we were pursuing that with earnest. And now, you know, Tiffany's pregnant, and I just saw, wait, how have I not realized this before? That this, you know, career path that I was on, you know, required a lot of me, 60 hours at least or more. And we were going to have a baby. How could I be the best dad that I can be and be there for all the moments and have the relationship that I wanted to have, you know, with my kids and still you working so much, so many hours and the hours that are out of my control. And I had this fear of I didn't know how I was going to do them both as well as I wanted to. I knew I'd do my best, but the reality was I just didn't see how I could be, you know, be the best dad that I could and husband and a family man, raise the family that I wanted while also pursuing my career growth, which I was also passionate about, not just to retire early, but I also enjoyed my job and helping people. And so I saw this happening, and it, it it really hit home when I was driving home from work. This was February, and Tiffany was pregnant and not feeling well. I gave her a call. I'm sitting in traffic, and I'm talking to Tiffany, and you know she's you know feeling not the best. So I was gonna go pick something up from Shoppers, and I was stuck in traffic. I wasn't going to be home for a while, and it was 6:15 or 6:30 already. It was already dark outside. I'm parked in traffic, you know, gripping the wheel. I have to go to work again tomorrow, and it's 6:30 p.m. I'm stuck in traffic. Won't be home for a while. And I had to, for the first time, picture what this is going to be like when I have a baby at home with Tiffany. They're going to be at home, struggling together, and I'm going to be at work, and I'm going to be stuck in traffic every day. And what? Maybe see my daughter for a few minutes before bed every day. That was my new life, and that fear was real. But I also didn't have an answer to it. I didn't know how to, you know, lean into that. I had no solution. That is what everyone did. That was the path. It's just something you have to do, and it is what it is. Life is life. And at the moment, that's all I did. I just accepted it and knew I'd have to figure it out, and that was it. Now, of course, as you all know, shortly after that, COVID became very real, and I ended up working from home. And so that fear never came into fruition. So this was big moment of fear number four. I didn't lean into that one. It was saved for me through COVID. As terrible as it was, and as hard as it was for our family, like many other families, the silver lining was that I got to be home for everything. I got to be there, you know, to see, you know, my daughter be a baby and grow and have her first words and her first steps. And I was so grateful for that. I actually couldn't believe this happened. I was, you know, one moment scared for these worlds colliding, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm working from home, which again, I was still pretty busy. I still had to work a lot of hours, but even being home was a huge difference maker. I could be there right after, no commute, no traffic. I can see her throughout the day here and there. And so even that level of freedom, to at least be able to work from home had a massive impact on the quality of life and the life that I wanted to live. I wanted to raise a family and deep bonds with my children and my wife. And so being home, that just a little bit extra freedom, still working a 9 to 5, made a massive difference. And so, you know, fast forward here, you know, Charlotte is one, it's the summer. She's, I guess, you know, a year and a half almost. And we're we're sitting outside. I can remember this, you know, vividly. We're outside, we're by the pool, you know, I have Charlotte on my lap, and yet the the fear started to creep in again. The reality was I was going to have to go back to work one day, and worse, I didn't even think of, Tiffany's also going back to work. When Matt leave's done, she's now working from home as well, and we're figuring that part of life out. That's hard with both, even working from home, both parents working from home, and you have a baby, hard. Um, and this fear started to pick up. Like, not only are we now both working, we're going to have to go back into the office, and both of us commuting. I I was looking at my daughter in front of me and being so grateful for the life that we had right now. And that fear just took it all away. So I was sitting there like just so grateful. That's what I remember, is that I'm looking around like my beautiful wife, my beautiful daughter. We're living in our dream home here in Burlington. And as it's like as I, was being feeling really grateful, it was like it was taken away from me in that moment. The fear crept right back in. It popped right in my head and told me, "You're going back to work." And so is Tiffany. And what is life going to be like then? And this time was different. Uh, this time I still didn't have an answer, but I had the resolve to say to myself in that moment that I'm not going back, that I'm in control of my life. And if that's not the life that it makes me feel good, if I'm hardly seeing my daughter, if that doesn't feel good, then I'm not doing it. Uh, I'm going to find out another path forward. And I don't know what it looks like. I don't have the answers, but I have the resolve, and I'm going to figure it out. So that moment of fear was frankly a quick. Other ones had built over time, etc. This one kind of snuck up on me, and I fought it back right away. And that started the next phase of my journey, which was to figure out what we do from here. So weeks are going by, and I'm considered all kinds of options. Uh, a more flexible job, either a job that, I can get paid less but work from home, or maybe like a partial entrepreneurial type of job, being a realtor, an investor, being a full-time investor. I had obviously the financial background to do that. We had enough money in the bank account to maybe give that a shot. But none of these things really resonated. So there was still a better option than going into work. I was going to pursue one of these things. And so I was just trying to, figure that part out. And then what happened here, so that was, the fifth moment of fear. So we're getting to the end of this story here a little bit. Uh, and so the next thing that happened is my friend referred me to a podcast. So I was essentially sharing him my concerns about where I was in life, today. I'm so grateful for everything that we have, and that never changed. And even if I had to go back to work, I would be able to still focus on being grateful for what I have. And so I was sharing that, but then sharing that real concern that I don't want to have Tiffany and I both be going back to the 9 to 5, that was not the life that we wanted. And what I was talking about, some of the options that I considered: real estate investing and being a realtor, some combo of both, stock investing. And, he was a financial guy, growth minded, always learning a lot, listening to podcasts. And so he had suggested I listen to a podcast about Airbnb arbitrage. This was the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I highly recommend it. It's a phenomenal show. His content's always great, and it's always good to be, learning new skills, especially in terms, creating wealth. So if you haven't heard of his podcast, go check it out. Subscribe. You won't regret it. Anyway, I was referred to a specific episode talking about Airbnb arbitrage. And this was someone who was successful with this business model here in Southern Ontario. Now, I had heard of Airbnb arbitrage before that. I saw it on Instagram or social media somewhere, a bunch of kids flashing Lambos. And I just assumed it was a scam or something like it, that it wasn't real. And I didn't think much of it. But hearing this podcast was different. This was an hour where I heard someone who had built a very real business. It made sense to me. It resonated why a landlord might want you as a tenant, that you could actually be the ideal tenant. And so it solved a solution for a lot of people, a lot of wealthy people. That's always a great business model. If you're solving solutions, or you're providing solutions to wealthy people's problems, you probably have a good business model. And that's where it started for me, realizing that. And then it just meant that the numbers had to work. And so I listened to this podcast thinking, this is what I'm going to do. and I listened to it again. And then I followed up on with the individual. I spoke to him a little bit, but more than anything else, it had actually been a year or two since that podcast, maybe 2 years. And he was now very successful with a sustainable, highly profitable business. And that sealed it for me. The business model made full sense to me. And the numbers worked here where I lived in Southern Ontario. He was successful. And I just knew that if he can do it with the determination that I have to make this happen, and with we have some starting funds, I knew that I can scale this business quickly and do an awesome job. And so that was it. I knew that this is what I was going to do. Now that just kicked off into the next number of weeks where I was figuring out what this actually looks like. And so, I was doing all the research. I was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, staying up late, networking with people in the industry, real estate industry in general, realtors, investors, Airbnb operators, arbitrage folks that were in the US mostly. I just started to learn more and more about the industry, build my network, run some more numbers, really make sure that this was doable. And then it got to a point where I started, you know, getting more and more confidence to the point where I was actually generating leads. I was looking for properties on platforms like Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji and many others to find properties up for rent that I thought would work in our business model, even hypothetically. And then I started having conversations with landlords. And I started talking to my wife. I was getting excited to think, hey, if we can even get 5 properties in our first year, like working it as a side hustle, that we can build our income. But more importantly, we can be building a side hustle or business where we could ultimately quit our jobs early. Whether it's a year or 2 years from now, we can leave our 9 to 5s and continue building this business. And so, that was that momentum that was building. Anyway, a lot more conversations with landlords, and now it's early December of 2021, and what we had was maybe 7 or 8 different landlords ready to sign leases with this business model. And all of a sudden, that caused some conversation, obviously, with Tiffany and I, like, okay, well, we just do one of these, I guess, right? And we start with one and we grow over time. And then at some point, someone had the idea, probably me, and I just kind of asked the question in the moment. I hadn't even given it much previous thought, and I said, well, what if I quit now? And I just go, we sign all of these leases, and I learn that much faster, and we build this business quickly. And we went, back and forth on that idea. It became more of a potential than I thought, but we struggled with it, right? So this is this next moment of fear. Up until this moment in my life, recall my first fear was during my internship when I wanted a stable life. That that wired me in a certain way for the rest of my life. I was wired to want security, stability. I wanted a very predictable future, and that's what I had built. Even through the other layers of growth and learning about myself, uh, that was one thing that, whether I realized it or not, I wanted and needed. I wanted stability. I wanted to know what my future looked like. And as a certified financial planner, of course, I was very much a planner, knowing, especially financially, what my future held. I was going to always make more than I spent. I was always going to use that surplus to invest and grow our wealth and retire early. And that plan was in motion, and nothing was going to take it away. It was a very obvious plan. There was no question about where we were going. And so this sixth moment of fear was, oh, wait, I'm going to quit my now high paying, secure job that I've been at for 12 years. I also enjoy it. I'm in the wealth management industry, and my job actually, I was a certified business coach as well. And so what I was doing was I was helping other people understand the importance of wealth and helping them reach their goals. And actually, it got to the point where I was helping our financial advisors across Canada scale their businesses. That's what I was doing as a business coach. I was helping them scale their businesses to be more successful and to align with the lives that they wanted with their families. And so I was doing my job. I enjoyed it, and now all of a sudden I was considering leaving my secure 9 to 5 and going the complete opposite route in terms of stability. I was going to start a pretty unique business that had all kinds of reasons why it might not work. And I was going to just do that almost out of nowhere. And uh, so that fear a number of times pushed me back into reality, thinking, no, no, you're going to do this part time. And then Tiffany and I kind of came back to the conversation, and ultimately what we realized, looking back on our journey of growth, overcoming fears and challenges, we knew that the most important times in life, the biggest moments of change, of growth, of becoming better versions of ourselves, all started with facing fears, facing hard things, overcoming challenges. And this was an opportunity for us to face a fear that we're choosing. We identified an opportunity that is scary. And that's another level. It's one thing when the world's coming at you and you need to fight back. That's also critical with your growth. Uh, but this was another level. This was, we don't have to go this path. We can just not do it and continue life the way it's going today. And it just didn't make any sense. We knew that regardless of the results of this business, that the opportunity was there, certainly, to perhaps change the direction of our lives, to continue living the life of our dreams was right in front of us. And no matter the result, making a decision to do it was the right one because it was going to force us to face our fears and to grow from it. And even if the business failed, it was the right decision. And that's when we realized I was quitting. And in the next couple of days, I submitted my resignation, which I'll share a couple of moments there, which were incredible. But I submitted my resignation, and then it was a day or two after that when Tiffany and I came back to the same conversation and thought, why are we going to do this separately? Why am I going to try and do this alone on my own while while we have a daughter? It was too much for us. And rather than that, it was, again, let's do this together. Let's give it everything we got to see, and that's the only way we're going to find out, whether this is going to work or not. So it became another easy decision. And no, she was going to resign too. We're both going to quit from the same company at the same time before even starting our business. But funny enough, as crazy as that sounded, it, we we kept like asking ourselves like are we crazy, and the answer is no, that no, we're doing the right thing. This is the right decision no matter the result. This is the right decision for us, and it's the next step in our journey wherever it leads. And I mean, submitting our resignations together was insanely powerful. Two two huge moments after that. Uh, the morning where Tiffany submitted her resignation, she woke up, she had it written, she sent it off by email to her boss, and then she took the kids to daycare, like almost right after that, which is just right around the corner. And I had a song teed up that was on our Alexas around the house. I was blasting the song, you can see clearly now the rain, that one. Wow. Sorry for that. Uh, I was blasting that song when Tiffany walked in the house, and she had just submitted her resignation, and there was tears in her eyes and mine as well, and we were just hugging, knowing we're going to do this together, and the release and the relief, the weight off of our shoulders of knowing that we are in control of our own lives, and that's what it was. And my moment came that evening, actually. That the day was crazy, and there was so much like emotion and so much that we were thinking about. And later that evening, I was going to go pick up some takeout, and I was just overwhelmed with energy. And I just was in the car, and I just yelled. I screamed almost at the top of my lungs to let out the energy. Again, the release of I think it's being proud of ourselves more than anything else. It was this, we just took another major step to take back control of our lives, to try and live our best life and the life of our dreams. Again, regardless of the result, we're going for it. And I had never felt a feeling quite like that before. That release, I've never felt the need to scream before, and I couldn't help myself. And so it was wild. And And then that kicked off the next, 2.5 years here of just then the growth has been almost never ending. When all of a sudden you're responsible for building your own business and truly being responsible for your own financial future and your life, uh, the growth is constant. How difficult it is, the challenges you have to overcome, being parents and business owners, navigating that world. Uh, the growth has been never ending. And a quick summary on the business, I'd say that the first year was crazy growth, a ton of mistakes and learning, failure across the board. I mentioned we launched 30 properties in the first 5 months. That was too many. That was our biggest mistake, is just launching way too much before we were actually experts. And so that, but at the same time, the plan was to grow quickly because we knew we'd learn more from it. And so we certainly did. We made a million mistakes, all of them, I think. And from that, we learned a ton. And year two was taking all of that learning and now expertise in the industry to reshape our business. We rebuilt the business from ground up. We had full-time staff, obviously, and so we had restructured our org chart, our roles and responsibilities, how we work together, the software to support it all and automate things, best practices, SOPs, leadership development of our teams, so that we had supervisors who really take ownership of the work. Year two was a grind to focus on building a really good business. And the way we saw that was focusing on the end value to our clients. And that may sound obvious, but it's not what a lot of people do. You're often focusing on the numbers, your P&L statement. And while we were looking at that, we knew that the numbers worked, and that in order to build a sustainable business, the first thing you must focus on is making sure that there's value to the end user. If there's not, you don't have a sustainable business. And so our number one client is the landlord and investor. And we don't have a business if they don't want us in their properties. And so we needed to make sure that we were solving a real problem for them, that we were their ideal solution, and that we proved it in action with our business model. So we did that really well. From the ground up, our business was designed to be valuable to the real estate investor and property owner. So we did that extremely well. Number two was the end user being our guests, the people staying in our properties. We needed to build a business that provided value to them as a hospitality business. And so, focusing on these two clients, we created a business and processes to support it, to deliver value to the end user and to optimize our P&L. That was after. And then the last thing we did towards the end of the 2 years there was make sure that it was automated, that it didn't need Tiffany and I as the business owners to run the day to day. It should always need us to, lead the direction of the company. So all your C-suite roles, we needed to put on the CEO hat, CMO, CFO, COO. So we kind of wear all those executive hats to make sure that you're doing all the right things as leaders of your company, as the owners of the company. And so we still, of course, do those things today. But the day to day is managed without us. Our teams and software run everything without us. And that was done intentionally, obviously, to free up our time to focus on the business, not be in the business, but also to pursue our next major goal, which was to create a second company, a coaching company. And while some thought this was just, the next step after we had freed up our time, the reality was we wanted to build this coaching company before we even launched the first one. We had it on a PowerPoint slide, like a couple of boomers, kind of mapping out our future of how we would grow our businesses. And the coaching company was the main destination. It's where our passion is. Having building a hospitality company, it provided the opportunity for us, but I wouldn't say that we were passionate about that industry. And whereas the coaching company, that's been my whole adult life. It's been all of the growth and learning, which is to understand wealth, understand not just the technical how to create wealth and the different ways of creating wealth, but maybe even more importantly for me, what I'm more passionate about is understanding how wealth fits in to living your best life. Because you need so many other things first, that the wealth is only a catalyst to living your best life, a tool, a resource, and a crazy important one that too many people don't appreciate. Um, and so my whole adult life was learning how to create wealth and learning how it fits in living your best life and then helping others do it. Again, in my career I got my certified as a business coach in addition to my financial designations so that I was best equipped to help people in my career find find that connection of how to create wealth and fit it in and to meet your lifestyle needs and goals. And so, of course, if I was going to be successful in another industry, the hospitality industry, I wanted to be excited about applying that same passion, that thing that I know I can help people with. I talk about positive impact. Positive impact being for us the the end goal, the goal of life is to have the biggest positive impact on the people around us, starting with ourselves as individuals, for each other as a couple, our kids, and then kind of a circular outwards from that to external, friends and family and people in general. Having a positive impact is our goal in life. And of course, my skills and background with wealth and now Airbnb or short-term rentals, we were able to create a coaching company that brought those two together. And so that's what we did over the last 6 months is build a coaching company that is going to help other people either add extra income to support their lifestyle today and or hopefully to also escape the 9 to 5 because this industry is unique and certainly provides the opportunity in so many ways to help people do exactly that. So that's the journey. You just heard the full story here. I'll end it off by sharing a few of my biggest learnings. So I'm reflecting on the last 10 years or 15 years or so over the last day or so before doing this live. I There's a few key lessons that I took away for myself, and I'll share them in case others find value. So the first is that if you aren't taking action towards your dreams, they'll remain dreams. That you need to be willing to be vulnerable with those dreams, attach emotion to them, speak the words out loud, and know that that is the life that you're going to live. Have that confidence that you can live the life that you want. And so if you have the courage to speak the words out loud about the life you're going to live, your integrity is going to hold you accountable to doing the work to get there. And if it's not, then you haven't attached your emotions and your nervous system to those dreams because otherwise you wouldn't allow yourself to come short. And so take action towards those dreams, and it starts by speaking the words out loud, to yourself out loud first, and hopefully to your significant other if you have one. uh, Number two, my only purpose is to get better every day. That purpose, when people talk about finding their purpose, your purpose evolves and changes. You don't have one purpose. It'll change throughout your life. You're gonna have, multiple, in terms of the what you're focused on is not the purpose. And that what you're focused on, what you're pursuing, your goals, all of that changes as you change and grow. But the purpose remains. My purpose is to just be a better version of myself every day and to always be asking myself what that means. Being a better father, a better husband, those are my biggest priorities. And then again, from there, how can I just be the best version of myself and holding myself accountable to working in that direction? And if you're doing that, I mean, so many things come from it. We can talk hours on just that. But once you fully know that that is your only purpose, you're going to start to be more accountable and take more control of your life because you won't blame anything on anyone else. You're in control of everything. And so once you know you're in full control, you're going to start to take way more accountability. You're going to ask yourself, what could I be doing better or differently here? Because it's all about you. That's all you can control. Number three, uh, I just mentioned our primary goal in life is to have a positive impact on people. There is no, to me, greater sense of peace, contentment than having a positive impact. And it could be little things you do every day. And that's where it starts. It's just simply being a good person to other people. It can be small gestures, little things. And then, of course, working towards, bigger, greater positive impact that we can have on people. And that fuels a lot of what we're looking to do. Even before we started about this Airbnb thing, when we were, working our corporate jobs and our plan was to retire early to get that time freedom, the plan was to build a non-for-profit because we always knew that that's to us what life is about. It's about having positive impact on people. So the the objective was to retire early and build a non-for-profit, maybe when we're closer to 50. The reality is we made that dream happen sooner. We created the time freedom through our business that runs itself today. And now we have the time to build a second business where we are helping others also escape the 9 to 5 and completely change their lives. And the non-for-profits, they will still be there, and just much sooner than planned for sure. Number four, the best things in that life has to offer comes on the other side of your biggest fears. And that was the story today. Every step along the way, the greatest moments of fear, of questioning my life, even the biggest one, obviously, when I hit rock bottom, those moments of fear, the decision to lean into that fear and take action to get yourself through that fear will lead to the greatest moments of growth and will lead to all of the greatest things that life has to offer. Love, passion, purpose, contentment, peace, joy. It all comes from working through the hardest things, doing the things you don't want to do or that you're afraid to do, being uncomfortable, getting over those failures, getting over that fear of failure or caring what other people think. These are all hard things that you don't want to do. And yet, your best life is on the other side of those hard things. Number five, the starting point of happiness. If that's a priority for you, and it certainly was for me when I hit rock bottom, that was one of the first questions: is why aren't I happy? How can I be happy? That's a very complex topic that I'll talk lots about on this channel. But at the end of the day, the starting point of happiness is knowing who you are and loving that person. And it comes with the integrity to that as well, that if you really spend the time to know yourself, most people don't. It's hard to dig in and actually know yourself, the good and the bad and the ugly. We like to just think of the good and kind of shy away from the harder stuff. But when you come to face your own self and know the bad and the ugly, and to ask those questions and to look to improve and understand your values and be better, that's when this all happens. When you truly know yourself, your values, and where you want to be better, and then you live your life with integrity to those values and where you're choosing to be better, you're proud of yourself, that's when you are truly loving yourself. And that's when you are living happy. And then, of course, your capacity for happiness grows from there in so many different ways. But none of that is really possible. You can't truly be happy if you don't know yourself and love yourself. And that's where it starts. The number six, the greatest catalyst for happiness. So if you have that first part, if you know yourself and your values and you're living with integrity and you love yourself, the greatest catalyst to expand that capacity for happiness is freedom. And wealth creation and understanding money is the greatest catalyst to fueling that freedom. And so I mentioned two levels, during this live. There's three. The first level of wealth creation, first level of freedom, is the mental freedom. So that's creating enough wealth, having control of your financial situation, enough to make it that it's not something that you worry about, talk about, think about. It's not a stress on your life. And that's the most important level of freedom, frankly, is to get control of your finances to where you at least are not brought down by it, that it doesn't distract you from the more important things in life. That's just it. Like, it's so funny that money itself isn't important, but having money fuels the freedom that is so important to living your best life. And so that's what that understanding is key. It's that first level of freedom, that mental clarity, that mental freedom is huge. The second level to financial freedom is the time freedom. And that's where you have enough wealth where, in particular, you're not having to work a 9 to 5. You no longer have to spend your time, your 60 hours a week to make money, fund your lifestyle. You've created enough wealth where your wealth funds your lifestyle. And and that's usually retirement for most people. That's that time freedom. They're working towards, that 65 or whenever they're able to retire to get that time freedom. Of course, if you can expedite that and work towards wealth creation where you're able to find that time freedom, escape the 9 to 5 today or soon. Uh, Again, that time freedom has, I think, the greatest impact on your happiness. Again, if you have your priorities straight, it doesn't buy happiness, to be clear, right? The wealth does not buy happiness. You need to have it and comes from within first. But time freedom gives you all the time in the world, mental and actual time, to build your dream life, to live your dream life, to spend the time doing the things that you want to do. And so it is so important that you are working towards that time freedom at whatever pace that you're able to work at it towards. And then the third, and probably the least important, but still the third level is that the freedom of opportunity. Essentially, you have the financial resources where there's almost no limits on what you choose to do, on the experiences you can have, the opportunities that you can pursue. Wealth creates that opportunity. So freedom being a priority that everyone should be working towards to live their best life, and understanding that wealth is what's going to drive in many ways those three levels of freedom. And then the last thing, that the most powerful thing in the world is love and family. And that's why it's my number one priority, that there's no other feeling like having deep love for your other half or for your kids. And to me, those are the two the greatest bonds, and nothing's more important than that. So aside from everything else, other than loving yourself, and it must start there, having that deep love for your family, and there's just nothing more powerful than that. Nothing that makes you more powerful. And I guess that's the point. Is not a random statement. Is that having that deep love and pursuing that deep love every day with your kids and your other half and yourself, that pursuit of love, choosing to move those relationships forward every day, that kind of purpose makes you incredibly powerful. When you have that, and you have it, that reciprocal feeling of loving someone and having that return, makes you a better, stronger, more confident version of yourself. Anyway, that's the full story. Hope you enjoyed. Hope there was some value in there for you, and lots more content to come. So, click subscribe, and we'll talk more in the future.